All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends here at Mile High Sports. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready. I am excited to talk about the Denver Nuggets rotation a little bit. Going to be probably a shorter episode than what I usually do. I'm recording this on late Wednesday night, way too late on Wednesday night for an off-season podcast, but wanted to get this one out. Going up on a trip over this weekend to a cabin in the woods. I'm sure it'll be peachy. It'll be great. But I'm very excited to get away for a little bit. Before I do that, though, I put together a little chart, as I am uh, known to do, a little table that has some projections, that has some rotation minutes projections based off of the current Denver Nuggets 14-man rotation or roster, excuse me. Not all of those guys will play every night. Injuries will happen. There's a lot of things that will sort of change that up and make it so that it's a little bit like this is not going to be right. I can guarantee that. But from this perspective, this is a conservative projection that I wanted to put out there for the folks. For those that are viewing on the YouTube side of things, I'll have an associated graphic. For those that are listening on the audio side of things, I'll try to take you through my thought process on this thing and make it as clear and concise as possible. The premise of this show, I think the Denver Nuggets got a lot deeper. I think that their rotation will be affected as a result. And the spots towards the back end of the rotation are going to get a lot more time than they have in previous seasons, especially with the way that Denver's now built out from a veteran standpoint. They've got both veterans and young guys that they have to play at the same time. So they're going to have to figure out how they do that. Might even get fewer minutes for the starters, lo and behold. That's the goal of the entire thing. But without further ado, let's get into it. This is the chart. If you are watching along, basically, that is the total minutes that each player within the Nuggets rotation played on the left side. And on the right side is the associated spot within the rotation filled out and who I have it projected as. That might change during the season, but this is kind of where I see it initially. And what that's going to look like is like, okay, how many minutes are each of those guys going to play for this upcoming 2025-2026 season? On the left side, let's focus on that just for a second. Jamal Murray played 2,418 minutes last season. That was actually a lot. Pretty sure that was a career high for Jamal. I have that going down in 2025-26. Christian Braun played 2675 minutes, the most minutes on the Denver Nuggets. I have that going down as well, but mostly because I don't expect him to average 35 minutes per game or whatever he averaged for basically 82 games. He's going to get some time off. He's not going to be able to handle the same thing from a physical perspective, and nor should the Nuggets want to. They should want to keep him fresh and ready to go for the playoffs, and I think that they will do as such. But if you're looking along on the YouTube side, you'll see that there are some associated arrows for both of those guys. Murray, I have going from 2,418 minutes to 2,200 minutes in the 2025-26 season. So that number goes down. That number trends down. For Christian Braun, same thing. About 275 fewer minutes for him. Denver's going to have to make up that number somewhere. And so I have them making that up with the addition of a variety of different guys. What you will notice if you look at this thing is that, yeah, Michael Porter played a lot of minutes too, 2,593. I only have Cameron Johnson playing 2,000. Like that is a massive drop off from a comparison standpoint. And Cam Johnson, his career high is 1,800 minutes. So this would actually be a career high in minutes that I have projected for him in this particular season. That may not happen. But to counteract that, obviously I've got Aaron Gordon playing a few more minutes. He was at 1,447 minutes this past year, played 51 games, only started 42. He averaged about 28.4 minutes per game. How I came to the conclusion that he would be projected for about 2,000 total minutes is I took that 28.4 minutes per game that he averaged in the regular season in 2024-25, and I just multiplied it by 70 and said, all right, what's the nearest round number that you kind of get to for that? But the long and short of this, and I'll keep going through it, of course, but the long and short of this is that, as you can see on the right side of the screen, I have Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, or basically we'll go by slot. The starting point guard, the starting shooting guard, the starting small forward, the starting center, the sixth man, and the seventh man all playing fewer minutes than they did during the 2024-25 season. That's a big deal. That is a really, really big deal. And here's why. Denver, if you recall, went into the 2024-25 season with Calvin Booth saying, I think we have 9 real guys on our roster. Immediately, that went wrong because of those 9 real guys, the players that you would expect in the rotation on a consistent basis. You already didn't have Deron Holmes from a health standpoint for the entire season. So you knew you weren't going to get anything there. And then Dario Saric got injured. Or not injured. He was bad. Vlatko Čančar got injured. They tried Hunter Tyson. That didn't really work. Every minute that Hunter Tyson was out there, the Nuggets were really struggling. They could not win those minutes, especially with the bench lineups. Zeke Naji, when he was at the power forward spot, was pretty good. When he was at the center spot, he was really bad. Jalen Pickett, when he was replacing one of Russell Westbrook or Jamal Murray, he was actually pretty good. But there's only so much that a third point guard can play, especially when you've got Jamal Murray out there setting a career high in total minutes. And you've got Russell Westbrook, who played over 2,000. So, there just wasn't a lot of time. The way to think about this is that for any one position across an NBA regular season, assuming that there are 0 overtimes, you have 3,936 minutes that you have to fill at any one position. Point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. That is 48 minutes times 82 games. And so you know that you're going to get up to about 3,900 with the combination of each of these guys. So Jamal Murray and Russell Westbrook, they combined for over 4,500. They played together a fair chunk of that. Jamal also missed some time. Russ also missed less time, but fewer games, but he still missed some games as well. Christian Brown and Julian Strawther, yes, they shared the floor together, but they basically accounted for all of the shooting guard minutes, except for the times when Jamal and Russ were sharing the floor together, or Jamal and Jalen were sharing the floor together. So you can see where Denver was a little bit overtaxed, especially with their starters, especially with their top guys. What I have now, and where I will point everybody out to, is the kind of 9th man spot, the 10th man spot. I have Jonas Valanciunas as the 8th man, playing 1,400 minutes per game, or 1,400 minutes total, excuse me. Julian Strawther during the last season was the 8th man for Denver. He played 1,384 minutes, so only 16 total fewer than what I have Jonas Valanciunas projected for. So that's not really where Denver's getting better. It's the fact that I have Tim Hardaway Jr. playing 400 more than DeAndre Jordan was able to play last year as the 9th man. I have Julian Strawther playing 450 more than Jalen Pickett played last year as the 11th man. Obviously, Aaron Gordon I have bouncing back and getting healthy. So that's where you're kind of making up some of those minutes gaps. And guys like Jalen Pickett, Deron Holmes, I have projected for 450 total minutes. That's low. Currently, that's the 13th man on the roster. But I also think that there's at least a possibility that those numbers go higher, at least in general. So we'll see what ultimately happens. Denver also has a 15th spot that they have to fill out as well. But what I am really seeing here from a roster building standpoint is that Denver's got depth at each of these positions. In the guard spots, they have Tim Hardaway Jr., Julian Strawther, Bruce Brown coming off the bench. Peyton Watson is their main forward. If there is a weakness for Denver, it's probably that they don't have a versatile group of forwards. Like Zeke Naji, Deron Holmes, those guys certainly can't play the three. Playing them at the three, I think, would be ludicrous. So you're probably going small in those cases, and you're playing a lot of those guards together. But I do think that that's like how the modern NBA is trending anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. But it's something to think about if you're looking to fill out that last roster spot. We've talked about wanting a point guard, but I don't know, like Jamal Murray, Bruce Brown, Jalen Pickett is a pretty reasonable point guarding group overall. So again, Denver will probably wait to fill that spot until they need to. Right now, I have it projected for 0 minutes, but that might change based off of who they get or when they get that person. But just in general, like it does feel like Denver's overall minutes will be changed. Like Jamal Murray playing 2,200 minutes versus 2,418 minutes. If you think about it from a games perspective, that is at least 6 games worth, probably closer to 7 games worth of time that he gets less. And the hope there is that it comes from the points per or from the minute per game average. People like, especially when talk about Nikola, I understand talking about his burden. 36.7 minutes per game is way too high. But Jamal Murray averaged 36.1. Christian Brown averaged 33.9, nearly 34 for 79 games. Michael Porter averaged 33.7 for 77 games. Just in the modern NBA, those numbers are very high, and expecting guys to play that many minutes on a consistent basis, I think, is a ludicrous thing. Just going to the total minutes played leaders, Christian Brown was 11th in total minutes played. There were like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the only guy on OKC who actually played in the top 20 in total minutes, and he won MVP. As everybody here knows, the next highest player on OKC, and the reason why I do this is you want a deep team. You want a team that plays or that has enough depth, has enough talent that it doesn't have to overtax its guys. Christian Brown played the 11th most minutes in the NBA. Michael Porter played 19th. Nikola Jokic played the 21st most in the NBA. Jamal Murray played the 34th most minutes in the NBA. I know a lot of people talk about the conditioning and the injury proneness. He was not last year. Like 60, actually. So he played 67 games, but to play 2,418 minutes in that stretch is wild. Total minutes per game, he was 10th in the entire NBA. So the actual burden that he carries, or at least carried this past year, was higher than I think people realize. I think Denver needs to lower the burden on their starting unit. It's going to be a great unit. You're going to want to play it. Totally understand that, especially if you're David Adelman. That's going to be a crutch. It just is. Like it's going to be really hard to get away from one of the best starting units in the entire NBA. But Denver has to. It's a requirement that they do so. If they don't do it, then they are going to suffer the same fate that they did in each of the past 2 years. Playing those excess minutes, playing those high number of minutes from a starting lineup standpoint. I remember in the 2023-24 season, 2 seasons ago, that the top 2 lineups that Denver played were a grand total of at least 500 minutes more than the next highest 2 lineups on any other team in the NBA. So like it was the starting lineup and it was the lineup of the 4 starters plus Reggie Jackson, replacing Jamal Murray in that unit. So like there's a lot of burden there that those starters have carried over the course of these past few years. And so now if you are Jokic, you get to play fewer minutes because Valanciunas is there. If you're Gordon, you're going to play more minutes, but you're not going to play more per game. You're probably going to play about the same from a per game standpoint, or at least that would be the goal, depending on what Denver does from a kind of backup power forward standpoint. If you're Jamal Murray, you got to reduce that point per or the minute per game threshold. If you're Christian Brown, doesn't need to play 34 minutes per game. Just doesn't. Like, you've got good players behind him. There's a reason why Denver added the depth that they did. They'll be able to get those guys rest from game to game when they can, but they should also be trying to play those guys fewer minutes overall. So we'll see whether that can actually happen, but let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about who gets cut from this rotation and is this going to make the Nuggets a better team or not? We'll be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it, folks. Okay. Who's getting cut from this rotation? Let me put this back up on screen. Basically, what I have put here is that the starters are the starters. You've got Murray, Brown, Johnson, Gordon, Jokic. And then you have Bruce Brown as the sixth man. You have Peyton Watson as the seventh man. You have Jonas Valanciunas as the eighth man. You have Tim Hardaway and Julian Strawther tying for that ninth and 10th man spot from a total minutes standpoint. But behind them, Zeke Naji is at 500 minutes. Jalen Pickett's at 450. Deron Holmes is also tied with Jalen Pickett for like that 12th man spot. Given what I just talked about with Aaron Gordon, it would not surprise me if one of Julian Strawther or Tim Hardaway Jr. had their minutes dropped a little bit. It also wouldn't surprise me if Jonas Valanciunas had his minutes dropped a little bit. And you think about, let's just do the math here. 1,400 minutes divided by 70. So that's an average of 20 per game. Like, that's a lot. So let's do 1,400 minutes divided by 80 total games. That's 17.5 minutes per game. Because Jokic and Valanciunas are a little bit more position locked, I probably overestimated Valanciunas a little bit too much here. It's probably closer to 1,200, maybe 1,300, what Nuggets fans should actually expect from him on a consistent basis. But think about that from a perspective. Like, DeAndre Jordan played 700 and Dario Saric played 210. So you combine those two and you're still getting like over 300 more at that point than with Jonas Valanciunas. And I think for Jokic, he would be very happy about that. So between like the center minutes, between like it wouldn't surprise me. Let's say Jonas Valanciunas plays closer to 1,200, and then you bump up to Ron Holmes about 200 more minutes to be that traditional kind of 11th man within this rotation, kind of outpacing Zeke Naji, just to try to become the power forward more consistently. But I do think that the consistent lineup that Denver's going to throw out there, or at least the consistent rotation, will be Bruce Brown at the 1, Tim Hardaway at the 2, Julian Strawther at the 3, Peyton Watson at the 4, Jonas Valanciunas at the 5. You're playing 4 guards and wings, maybe a forward if you count Peyton Watson as a forward, around the big behemoth that is Jonas Valanciunas. And that is kind of where you go. That's just the consistent option that you're going to. I think that if Denver's trying to win games on a consistent basis, like especially like if they're in a stretch of their season in January where it's like, actually January is a tough one. December, if they're in a stretch of games in December where they're like, all right, you know what, we have to really lock in here. Momentum needs to be back on our side. We've been kind of going back and forth, maybe winning 2 games, losing 1, winning 2 games, losing 1. Really want to start locking in and getting a 5-game win streak or so. Denver probably goes to a 9-man rotation, and you're looking at the 5 starters plus Bruce Brown, Peyton Watson, Jonas Valanciunas, and one of Tim Hardaway Jr. or Julian Strother. And then you go with a 9-man rotation and you're really focusing then. But then there will be times where guys are out. As I mentioned, there will be times where Denver needs a little bit more size. Maybe Jonas Valanciunas is not necessarily keeping up from a speed standpoint with a certain bench of whatever team. It's certainly not a traditional Western Conference team. It's more of a, let's say it's a Boston, and you have to, like I was talking with Matt Moore tonight on Locked On, and basically saying, yeah, like you're going to play Jonas Valanciunas in a deep drop. Well, can you do that with Peyton Pritchard? Can you do that with Derek White? Can you do that with Jaylen Brown? It's not necessarily an ideal situation, but can you do that on a consistent basis against those guys? Maybe if you're punishing them on the other end. If you're not, maybe that's where Deron Holmes plays a little bit more backup five, or you slide over Zeke Naji and you're going more perimeter oriented or something. But even then, like I kind of think Denver's just going to keep Valanciunas out there. So he's going to get minutes. He's going to get the opportunity. There will also be some times where Jokic doesn't play and Valanciunas actually, like, rather than it being just a consistent 17-minute per game average or 15-minute per game average, he then plays 30 minutes in a game because he moves over to the starting spot. So there will be plenty of those. There will be plenty of those opportunities where those minutes are manipulated a little bit. But I'm going to guess that on a consistent basis, the four names that are not playing in this rotation are Zeke Naji, Jalen Pickett, Deron Holmes, and Hunter Tyson. There will be opportunities for Deron to play, of course. I'm not advocating for him not to. If anything, I actually think that Denver should go with more of a 10-man or 11-man rotation on a consistent basis. But just knowing David Adelman, knowing what he likes, what he desires to do, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be his MO, especially when the team needs some wins, especially when they need to develop consistency. You want to give your players longer runs. You want them to feel like they have a runway enough where they could actually make mistakes, play through some things, and then iron some stuff out and get better. That's the hope. That's what the regular season is for. So we'll see if that's something that they actually do or not. But final thing, will it make the Nuggets a great team? Is this kind of setup something that makes Denver better? I think the answer is yes, personally. I think that this is the deepest team that the Nuggets have had since about, like, really since before the bubble, where you've got the 2020 bubble team, where you've got Murray, Gary Harris, Will Barton, Paul Millsap, Nikola Jokic. That's your main starting five, but Will Barton doesn't make it into the bubble. Gary Harris is hurt for that time. Michael Porter eventually transitions in, but he's a guy that you can count on. Did you have Trey Lyles at that point? No, you didn't. You had Jeremy Grant for that particular team. You had Torrey Craig, of course. You had Monte Morris, of course. Malik Beasley was not on that team. He was traded by that point. So a little bit less depth when you get into the bubble. But before that, like in the season before, where they had Mason Plumlee and Trey Lyles and Monte Morris and Malik Beasley and that whole mix, like it's the kind of mix that of young guys and some vets that, like, I think Denver's pretty close to now. I think that they have like Jonas Valanciunas, where he is right now, I think is pretty comparable to who Mason Plumlee was at that point for Denver. A pretty positive backup center, somebody who could run a lot of the same things that Jokic is running from a schematic standpoint. Now it's more of a traditional post up, pick and pop, run some things through the elbow, through the post as a passer, things like that. Before it was just, hey, can you pass like Jokic? Can you run DHOs? Can you run pick and roll? Things like that. Jokic was not the scorer that he is now, and Jonas has to replicate that a little bit. But I do think that going through this process and playing a deeper rotation and trying different things. Like that's to me, that's the most important thing that Denver lost over the course of these past couple of years with the way that the team was constructed. There was so much pressure on each individual element to get right that Denver was not able to pick and choose what they were trying to develop at any particular time. They were not playing the game within the game, if that makes sense. There's so many things that they did back in 2023, especially after they found out, okay, we are good enough. They figured that out in January of 2023. There was a run, so they had like Jamal Murray had that big game winner on December 8th of 2022 back during that championship season. And after that, basically Denver took off. They had different elements that they were looking at, but they figured out they could win with defense. They figured out they could win with transition. They figured out they could win with offense. They had a whole bunch of buttons that they could push. And whether it was Jokic just pushing the Jokic button, whether it was the two-man game, whether it was Michael Porter getting involved, whether it was Aaron Gordon just dominating from the dunker, running in transition, Bruce Brown making chaos, things like that. They had so many different things that were actually like value adds that they pushed at throughout that entire regular season, especially that stretch in December, January, February. Denver hasn't had that over the course of the last two seasons. They are always putting out fires. They're always trying to make up for injury absences, defensive mishaps and confusion, guys not feeling it. Like mostly it's about the defense and mostly it's about the communication this past year. But if you believe that those things are going to be taken care of, and Denver's a more professional, like they were professional, obviously, but just even more so, even more kind of put together. If you believe that they are going to provide that approach this season, then you worry about the game within the game. And that is like let's figure out how Christian Brown can handle these playmaking duties. Let's figure out how Deron Holmes can play as a switch everything center against the Golden State Warriors. Let's figure out how Jonas Valanciunas operates when he's playing next to Nikola Jokic. Is that a viable thing that they can try? And you just start trying things. You just start playing around with your food a little bit because winning is easy because you have the baseline skills necessary in order to make it easy. What's difficult is finding different ways to win. Denver in this past season, they had one way that they could win. That was using fullback dive, driving it straight down the opponent's throat, and going to the paint and outscoring the opposing team because they weren't going to play any defense on the other end. This time, they have to find ways to play defense. They have to be better in transition on both ends of the floor. They have to win from the perimeter just as much as they are from driving to the paint. And they've got to be more tactical. They stopped being tactical this past year. They were just a win one for the Gipper kind of team and hope that Nikola Jokic can carry you through. It's got to be better than that. And they can be. I really do think that they can. So will playing a whole bunch of rotation minutes for these other guys, will that make them better? Yes, it will. They will, I think, force each other to be better. It's a more competitive environment. If I put it back up on the screen here, Julian Strawther goes from being the 8th man to the 10th man in this particular setup. He could even be the 11th man in certain circumstances. I have him currently playing more than one of Zeke Naji or Deron Holmes, but couldn't he play less because he's not a power forward? Denver kind of needs a power forward. They need somebody that can connect those spots a little bit. Julian Strawther's got to bring it. If he wants to play, if Tim Hardaway wants to play, if Peyton Watson wants to play, he'll probably have more of a spot guaranteed because of his skill set. But there is a world where Denver's best lineup off the bench is Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., Julian Strawther, Deron Holmes, Jonas Valanciunas. That's a world. That's a pretty straightforward thing to think about. Deron Holmes providing that secondary rim protection, extra size, extra rebounding, a little bit better spacing. Like Peyton Watson's got some pressure on him. So got to be good. Got to bring your A game. If you want to be in the Nuggets rotation now, it is not a guarantee. It is a hope. And so that would be the desire, I think, for the Nuggets is that competition breeds at least a little bit more excellence for the team. Excellence was lost a little bit. It's time for them to get back to it. They should be better. It should be more put together. I really do believe that this team is set up to win about 55 to 60 games. It's going to be fun. Like, I do think this is going to be an enjoyable experience. And when you go through and project the minutes and really try to expect what guys are going to do, it'll probably be different from my projections. But if it's relatively similar, it's going to be competitive. Going to be a group that is really fighting to get on the court. And that's what you want. You want a team that wants to be out there, that has a lot of guys that deserve to be out there and are capable of winning basketball games. Okay. Everybody, that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends here at Mile High Sports. I'm going to be gone for the rest of the weekend. If there's anything that pops up, sorry, I'm off the board. I'll be back on either Monday or Tuesday, try to get some things in order as we transition fully into the deep offseason. Expect some guests. I'm going to be talking to Jeff Morton here relatively soon. Very excited to do that. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning into this episode of Pickaxe and Roll.